Good evening, my name is Christina DiStefano. I'm the Executive Director at Tioga Arts Council. This is my new assistant, Dante DiStefano Jr., and welcome here with us today for our virtual Hidden Gems tour. We really appreciate your support this year and every year for this event and others. We're really excited this year because we were lucky enough again to enlist the services of artist Phil Hendrickson, who made this video today. And this year we wanted to try something a bit different. Instead of viewing strictly homes, we wanted to take you to places that you may not know around Tioga County where people live and work and create. And they're truly beautiful and uniquely Tioga. With that said, I'd just like to say a few thank yous. First to Phil Hendrickson, our videographer, to our supporter, Tioga County Tourism, as well as our presenting sponsor, Scott Smith & Son, and our two supporting sponsors, Owego Floor and Covering and Janice Anderson and Architects. Thank you so much for all of your support this year, for purchasing a video rental of this event, and for making Tioga County a vibrant and more creative place. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and enjoy.
Hi, my name's Dana.
And I'm Charles Ouellette.
These are our children.
We're the owners and growers of Two Sparrows Farm.
So we came to Berkshire when we had this awesome opportunity for my husband Charles to go to grad school through the Army and then move on to teach at West Point. We had always grown gardens up until that point, you know, throughout the country as we moved around. But then when he had this opportunity to come here, we really wanted to put down roots somewhere. And then we dug in and got sheep and really started trying to figure out how and what we wanted to farm. So we realized that was flowers because we started buying dahlias for our own personal use and growing them. And we had this huge patch of dahlias and it was kind of like, who needs that many flowers anyway? And we realized we were kind of good at it. Then we were like, well, what are we gonna farm? We need a crop to farm. And it was like, well, why don't we farm flowers? Yeah, that's the Uncle Joe dahlia. What Joe didn't do is pinch his dahlias. When they're about 8 to 12 inches tall, you literally pinch off about an inch of the plant, just above the next set of growing leaves. So Joe has these beautiful symmetrical leaves all the way up, and that's why his dahlias were taller than us. We pinch, and so they become a bush, and then you get longer stems with more flowers. Yeah. So generally you grow dahlias from a tuber. But in learning all the things that we've recently learned, we've learned how to grow dahlias from a seed. And the neat thing is a dahlia isn't true to its form, so you can't plant a white dahlia seed, a landcress, and get another landcress. Instead, you don't know what you're gonna get.
So Dana said that every flower has a story, right? We grew these from seeds. I don't remember what they were from, but this is a new variety, and we named it after our daughters. We call it Rosalind dahlia for our daughter. Linny is our oldest daughter, and Rosemary is our other daughter. So we named this after them.
It's our Two Sparrows flower, yeah.
Lighter pink is very much Rosemary's color.
The deep red is our oldest.
Yeah, it really makes us think of Linny.
So the only way that we'll propagate this is by digging up the tuber and splitting the tuber. That's how we'll get more Rosalinds. Otherwise, the dahlia will die and it will be gone. But all of the same variety of a dahlia has come from one tuber.
Yep, and that's split over and over.
And over and over and over again. Flower farming is like the icing on the cake. If our flowers are growing well, then we know that the other aspects of our farm are going well. Our sheep we use to, for their fertilizer and to keep the grass mowed.
We have wool at the mill now, and we intend to dye it ourselves using our flowers.
Our ducks help keep our sheep healthy because they eat pests that hurt sheep, but then also all the bugs that can hurt the flowers.
Yeah, it's been neat to kind of think about, okay, well, I don't want to use a pesticide, but what can I don't have to be helpless, you know, to these things. I can introduce a predator, you know, just think about like what's the predator of this, this pest in nature, right, and then bring that on the farm.
Well, it's important to us to farm that way because we're all in it together, and we don't want to put a flower to our nose that has a bunch of chemicals on it. And same with, and we want our land to be healthy, and we want our vegetables to be healthy that we grow for our own family. And so it's all a part of the same cycle, the same ecology. The house was built in 1831 with the bricks from here, the Berkshire brick factory.
We fell in love with this house and this piece of land. It's about 10 acres. So we're still trying to figure out how to fully maximize it.
You use all of it?
Yeah, use and care for all of it, yeah.
We'll start school, like the school part of the day, probably around 9 o'clock after morning chores and that kind of thing are done. Animals are taken care of and ready to relax. Then they start school around 9 o'clock. And then they dive right in and dig in to their day. They'll do their studies until about 3 or 4 o'clock. And then they'll, you know, be done and
do kid things. For the bees, you know, we spent a lot of time with the capturing swarms of bees and putting them in new hives this summer. So there was a lot of learning that happened there.
Our children are the heart and soul of our farm. Doing this together has been an amazing experience for our family. It's been an amazing project. It's just amazing how powerful the story of a flower is. And to be able to share that with our community and be a part of our community has really been a really neat goal to achieve. We're on Instagram and Facebook.
Go to our website, twosparrowsgrow.com, and our phone number is on there. You can call us. We can make an arrangement to order. Right, or you can come out on Mondays from noon to 6.
I studied at Rochester Institute of Technology in the School of American Crafts, and I have a bachelor's degree in woodworking and furniture design. Coming out, my choices were to continue on to grad school and hopefully find one of the 4 or 5 teaching positions in the country, becoming a studio artist and working for myself, or finding a shop that wanted somebody with the skills that I had developed, and my parents made the offer that I could come home and give this a try, and that was the most appealing option at the time for me, and I did it, and I'm still here.
Well, I think Ben and I have always been doing art type of things since he was quite young, starting with drawing, painting on the walls. He would draw some designs on some boards, and the two of us would go to the basement and cut them out on the bandsaw. That was the beginning, and then he just took off on his own.
My parents said they needed a pantry. That's what inspired the piece. It's maple and cherry. Most of the cherry was either harvested here on the farm or on the hill, or from property that my father's family has owned up in the northern Adirondacks. It's something that the color mixing and matching is sort of something that evolved as I was in college. Another artist I saw at a craft show when I was still in college looked at my portfolio and said, you need to come up with something in your work that's sort of signaturely your mark, and that's where these V-notches came from, and then the blending of the colors of the natural wood. Most of the woods I try and use are native to the region, so it's the natural palette, and I use a natural finish that just highlights and brings out those natural colors. Just playing the contrasts off between the curves and the angles and the colors to create new details that you see, and they evolve as you walk around the piece. Turning bowls is sort of fun and therapeutic because it's all spontaneous. I don't work from plans or anything. And I've done a few carved, more sculptural pieces the same way. It's just, you do focusing on getting all the joinery just perfect and all the crisp details in a piece of furniture, and then taking a break from it and just going at something with a power carving tool is just a different release of energy that's nice to switch back and forth. So there's a little bit better quality to some of the old tools. Cost wasn't always the driving factor in how things were made like it is now, so they made things to last. They weren't disposable. And that comes through when you're using them. Well, I've been fortunate that the people who have had them before me have taken care of them and they're still working. I build things with, very traditional techniques that have proven that they'll hold up over time, and I try and make museum quality construction and finish and everything so that hopefully that they will be last and cherished for generations, and that hopefully kids and grandkids will be fighting over who gets them.
Thank you all for coming up. I was going to sort of give a brief overview of my whole process, but we'll go up, we'll take a look at the sawmill and the drying sheds where I process lumber, and then we'll come back down to the shop and we'll talk about some of the steps I go through to turn those logs and boards into my finished pieces. The past few years we've been concentrating on removing the ash trees which are being killed by the emerald ash borer. There's some of the ash borer here. So there's a bandsaw blade that runs in the sawmill. Here's the blade. It runs horizontally. This whole carriage moves up and down, and then the whole carriage with the motor runs past the logs. So my dad's been working out here cutting the joinery on his timbers for some of the buildings that we're going to be working on. So when I envision a project, I come out here and I look around and I see what's available. For speculative pieces, that's great. Sometimes I have customers order something, and if I don't have it on hand, I end up going and buying it. But right now, I'd say at least 70 to 80% of what I'm doing, I'm providing the lumber from my local supply. So your first step is you get your rough piece of lumber, and you can see how twisted this piece of wood is. You got to start the milling process where you're flattening and getting it to the dimensions that you can work with, which starts on your joiner. I cut most of my wood at 5/4, which is 1.25 inches thick, and by the time I'm done milling it, I usually have a nice, at least 1 inch thick piece of wood. And then I go to the table saw, which is here, to rip that to width. After they're squared up, I go in and I cut my mortises, which is a joint like this. This is a mortise and this is a tenon. I use this machine here, it's called a multi-router. This table moves back and forth, in and out, and then this cutter bit can be positioned to the height you want. That's how I cut the corresponding tenon that goes into the mortise. And that's where you get your joint. And this is put together and clamped and glued in the final process. But I do all that while the pieces are squares. And then after all my joinery is cut, that's when I go back in and start doing my shaping to get all the curves. After the joinery is cut, we start doing some of the detail work. This is the jig that was used to make this leg. And then this is taken as a square block into the jig, and you have to do it in the right sequence so that you can have reference points in the jig to hold it. And I use, this is a pattern you see all over on the walls. I've got all kinds of patterns, different shapes that I use, sort of my vocabulary that if I make a curve, I often save it because I can tend to come back and use those curves again. I'll trace the pattern so I can take the bulk of the material off with the bandsaw. From the bandsaw, I have my shaper set up conveniently right next to it so I can be cutting there and turn around. This is a cutter head that spins, and on the bottom it's got a bearing that rubs right along my template. I do 3 styles. I do full custom pieces, like most of these pieces here are full custom, where the person comes to me and say, I want a buffet for this space, I want these woods, and that's when I do a full drawing, and that's a full custom piece. Then I do signature line pieces, which are these tables here. I usually have 1 or 2 around, but if somebody says, I want this table, but I need it to be an end table. So I've got the design already, so it's just a matter of scaling it for an end table for them, and then they'll pick the wood colors they want. And then there's the purely speculative pieces like the coffee table over there. It's sort of it's designed with that piece of wood in mind that I used for the top. You know, that was the starting point for that design, and I just wanted to build that. So I've put this board, you know, this board wants to cup this way. This board, the grain is running the opposite direction. So that's fighting the cupping action, but this board is getting wider this way and narrower as the seasons change and humidity change. So this board has a tongue that sticks in here, and then it's got a tenon that comes in, and it comes back, and it comes over, and there's another tenon here. So this tenon has a hole straight through it, and the peg locks it in the center. These 2 tenons have an oblong hole in them. So this piece of wood can slide on these pins, but it still holds it tight. It's called a breadboard end. And that's a big thing with furniture, and especially if you're using air-dried lumber like I am. Wood is a living, moving object. So when you put a piece of furniture together, you have to allow it to move, breathe. And this is an example of why it's really nice to be able to cut your own lumber, because these are 2 boards, the seam's right in the middle. Those are 2 boards from the same log. So I cut them sequentially so the grain matches. It's called book matching. Right. So you have the swirls that match and the wave.
So this is your signature on your PC.
And this is usually the last thing I do on anything. Everything is sanded and ready to be glued up. And those don't take any sanding if my chisels are sharp, with the finished surface inside there. That's great. I saturate the entire piece. I don't get it like running off of it, but I give it a nice coat of finish. And then I let it set for, you could set for an hour or so. And once that starts to get tacky, I come back with some rags. Normally I do all 4 faces of the, and then that'll set for 24 hours at least. In humid weather, I usually let it set for 2 days. And then I come back and I do the same thing over again.
2005. Actually, when we did first idealize this, we thought we wanted to have like a wood stove and be off-grid, and we started out with a compost toilet. Found out for code we had to have different heating. The solar was too expensive, and guests hated the compost patty, so we shifted. So our typical guest is usually a couple, but we have, you know, the futon pulls out, so it's a queen size bed, and so we can actually, you know, host like small families. When we started raising our family here, it's great, except for one thing: we're kind of isolated. And so they have different farm apprentices that we've had on the farm come and like live for a summer, or just the different guests that come here. So like different people like that my kids have been able to meet and learn from. And that's the mission. You know, it was like, we want people who want this, who love this, to come here and be able to have it, and just to be able to take a breath. They've left all those little notes. Yeah, somebody sketched the cabin. The guest did like a little self-portrait. So we tap our maple trees. So we do maple syrup, and then things like our maple syrup, our kale, our potatoes, our eggs, that goes on a tray, comes over here for our guests. Everything else, you know, we try to get local, like we serve local juice and locally roasted coffee. And we try to be seasonal. Like right now we're doing apple crisp for one of the breakfasts. When we were buying this land, we knew this is what we really wanted, but it had been a farm. So we named it Forget-Me-Not Farm, just to acknowledge all the farming and all the land tending that had already happened here. A lot of the plants that are in the products that we make, they're already growing here. And so we're cultivating more than, you know, planting and tilling, and it's more intuitive, I think. Just different weather and different plants show up. It's pretty cool over the years, just watching. So these are the big showy ones I was talking about. This is one of the plants that I use for dyeing. So this is another one of the dye plants. It's jewelweed. Some people say it's jewelweed because these are so bright, but if you've ever seen this plant, like in the morning when it's all covered with dew or right after rain, I think that's what it's named for. It's absolutely stunning, like little diamonds all over it, the way it holds the water. This is the indigo right here. So I have hope of getting, like saving my own indigo seeds from it. This leaf right here, you can see a little blush of blue. That just means that plant's been being stressed probably by a bug somewhere. Like here, this one's faded from the sun, but you can see the blue. So this is full of medicinals. There's the Tulsi, Echinacea, Monarda, and sage. Solomon seal it's a root. It's a really low plant that's in here and up there. So right now we're harvesting nettle seed carefully with gloves. For like guest breakfast, I mix it with sea salt. It's like an energy boost. And then that little area down there, that's our little campfire area, which is open to guests to come down and have a campfire. But also we do things like swaps down here. We've done like, you know, herb swaps, and we've just done like community swaps where everybody brought things they wanted to trade back and forth. And then that little stage by the creek, we actually bring in some local musicians, and they'll play, and we'll have a potluck. See, there's Angel and Caleb. We used to do all of the cultivating, like any tilling or plowing with the horses. And Angel also used to pull a cart. Anyway, they're kind of pets now. The kids will sit on them and ride them around up here. These are the coonies. They have really bad eyesight. So it's Hansel, Gretel, Tubby, and Frank. So we're hoping actually to raise some piglets from Hansel and Gretel. These guys were a little harder to train than Marcus, the guinea hogs, when we raised them. I think it's their eyesight.
I'm gonna see if we can call them down or not. Sheep, sheep, sheep. You wanna take it? You're gonna bring them down? Okay, she's going. So this little, the light colored sheep right here, that's our Hog Island Ram. He's still a baby. And then the rest of these are mixed. There's the Hog Island Ram that's in the back. It's the one that's going to a different, he's being sold to a different farm. As you can see, he's very rammy. He's ready to go be a patriarch somewhere. So this is the farm stand. And this is my little stash of my hand spun. I don't use any chemicals when I'm coloring the wool. These are the natural colors of the sheep. We have a lot of spotted sheep, and so we'll take the different colors of their wool and separate it out, including the white, which I don't have any white, just white to show because it's all colored right now, and I haven't got my harvest back from this year yet. So I dye with food scraps too. This is avocado right here. This is from the pits and the peels. The most frequent comments about our wool isn't even just about like, oh, it's a pretty color or whatever, but it's how soft it is. And that's because there's no chemicals being used in this process. But here's our potatoes. These are the Yukon French fingerling. We grow these every year. We also grow a lot of garlic. This is a copper alembic still. And so we are like a mini little distillery, and I'm making hydrosols. So these are rose, and these were actually distilled from 4 or 5 different kinds of rose that we grow on the farm. So I distill rose, mint, tulsi, which that's a basil, but it's a beautiful nervine. It's like super relaxing, and lavender, and also clary sage. A lot of the products that we're making, my essential oils that we produce as a secondary product besides the hydrosol, they go into them. So like there's a little perfume here, there's a solid perfume stick, and then in a lot of our salves too. Also our bug spray, which we're sold out of because it's been a very buggy year. This is our simple skin salve that we make, and this one doesn't have any essential oils in it, it's just infused plants. And this is a recipe that we've been using on the farm for a super long time, and everything from, we call it farm girl grease because we're women farmers. Being out here means being a little more independent. You know, if there's a bunch of snow on the road and it's a Sunday, might not even have a plow go through sometimes. So if I have things that I can make myself, it's just more sustainable. I love the idea of being a little bit self-sovereign, like, whoa, I can go fix my headache with my mint from my garden. And I love to be able to teach people how to do that. I did formal studies. I went to Seven Songs class. It's called the Northeast School of Botanical Medicine. I also studied with Margie Flint. She's out in Marblehead, Massachusetts. And then I also traveled to Arizona, and I took classes with Michael Cottingham. That's actually where I learned the essential oil making and the hydrosol making and distilling. Plant medicine and pharmaceutical medicine, it all has the same, the same history. It just kind of split and went two separate directions, and they really aren't the same thing anymore. And so using essential oils and supplements isn't regulated. People should have a hesitancy, and I think that's where I feel like educating people, because there is an interest in it, that's maybe more important.
I was from New Mexico. Suzy had come out, we met, so that was like September. By October of 1980, we got married, and we're living in Rochester. When we came down for the weekend to see her mother, some friends were looking at this place, brought us out here, and we said, she says, I have to have this. Called in, took vacation, called IBM, said I need an interview. We interviewed on Tuesday. I said I need an answer by Thursday because Friday we're buying a house. And they offered me a job on Friday. We called Mildred, on Thursday, we called Mildred on Friday and bought the place.
Our mantra is, we bought the land and they threw the house and the barn in for free. But we wanted to come home. We wanted to come back to the area. And we wanted to homestead. That was at the time, that was such a big thing. And we bought animals and, you know, tried to do that. And we had no other heat besides wood for 7 years. And we thought that was okay to do, which we done.
I used to get up in the morning, and part of our remodeling, I'd get up in the morning, Tom Babcock had built us our Russian fireplace, and I'd pull pieces of the flooring up, throw them in, burn them. And so that's how we did the kitchen, was just, same thing with the barn. I'd go out, pull wood off the barn, bring it in, burn it, and that's the first few years of heating. Well, Eli and Betsy settled here in 1812 and built a log cabin here. So we're not sure exactly when it transitioned to the house or they just built on the house. 1835 is when they were able to actually buy it from the Cox patent. So that's where the deed starts. So we know the house existed in 1835.
When Mike was working on the schoolhouse, people would stop and say, I went to school here, my mother taught here.
When we bought this place, the schoolhouse was there. All the school desks, chalkboards, everything.
Stove.
They had closed it in 1958, it was just like when they closed it, they just locked the doors. And we, over the years, had asked to buy all of that, and the farmer didn't want to sell it.
The farm got broken up and it was sold, and it was part of a package that kind of surrounds the cemetery over there. And I mean, it's out of sight, out of mind for the guy who bought it. And he kept saying, because we asked him, and he kept saying, oh, I'm gonna do something with it, I'm gonna do something with it. And finally, I don't know, Mike just asked him enough times and he was like, okay.
Well, the thing that we do, whether it be this house, whether it be the barn, whether it be the school, is we're not restoring. Right? I'm not trying to make it look like it did 200 years ago. The same thing with the schoolhouse. We're trying to take it on to the next stage while showing respect for what it used to be.
Yeah, that's definitely.
And that's and that allows a lot of leeway then in what you're doing.
I always wanted that feeling as when we first came here as a young family, you know, starting out. I wanted that putting down roots feeling. And we feel like stewards of the land in that sense. We want to preserve it. I love the historic value of it, but all your experiences contribute, right, to what you do in your home. It's your home. You want to enjoy it and feel comfortable. Not that we have anything valuable or great or anything, it's just collected over the years and places we've been and things we've enjoyed or people we know, and it's your parents and it's your friends and it's colors you love or styles you see that just speak to you. And it's almost easy from that point of view, you know what I mean? It just happens. Like this coffee table. I never would have gone out and bought this coffee table, but it was my parents. And we sat around this coffee table and had Christmas and did all these things. And I can remember my father telling me it was pecan wood. And I was like, really? Pecan? I can hear him saying it, you know? It's things like that.
But a lot of it is Suzy. I mean, I'll have a vision I'm going to do something, like the schoolhouse. And she'll say no. And we will negotiate, but the negotiation tends to be recognizing that she has just like how she hung the art show. She has a vision. Nice.
The art thing too, it's so interesting to see the people that come. Some people have lived up here, like I'm saying, they're part of the fabric of what's up here. And then people coming from far away and just being awestruck by the fact that country exists like this. You know, they're so surprised.
Well, and that's really what we're trying to do with the art show, the barn. I mean, one of my favorite comments from the artist is the fact they appreciate it because it brings them all together. They get to meet other artists.
And I like the conversation between town and country. It's like we can connect it in a way, and the art does. And if people can come out here and say, oh, it's beautiful, we need to take care of it, not our particular property, but the bigger picture, you know, maybe it exposes some of that.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome to Croft and Everyday Life, Everyday Art. We have several different awards. This year we have 2 honorable mentions that we'll start off with. And the first honorable mention is hereby proudly presented to Chris Knickerbocker for Feather Your Nest. Woo! Congratulations. Thank you. And the money's, this next category is for fiber, to the best fiber for Julie Thurber and Jemima. The best wood is hereby proudly presented to T. Benjamin Hobbs for Reliquary. Is the best in show is hereby proudly presented to Brian Keeler for Still Life with Blue Butterfly. Thank you, thank you.
Think back to our first show, and the reason we're doing this, Betty Bryden and Tom Canuse of Butternut Gallery in Montrose suggested that Mike and I could pull this off somehow. And she just led us to tonight, really. And sadly, she and Tom passed away this past year. And we are missing her very much. She drove from Montrose every day to help get the first show hung. Some of you were here for that first show, and she came and sat, and Tom sat at the table inside and carved.
We were sitting upstairs at the table trying to decide what to name it, and Tom just looked at it and said, "Everyday life, everyday art." And went back to carving.
And finding the extraordinary in the ordinary. And so much of the work, I mean, you know, fields and moonlight and vases, and I mean, it's all stuff that we see every day, or hopefully, luckily. So it is every day, and I just hope that we can remember Betty and Tom. They really believed in me as an artist, and it was the first time I'd ever shown in their gallery, and so we just want to present a little award, and I haven't seen her either tonight, to Laura Jane Smith. You're here, Laura. You're here. Thank you all for being here, and enjoy the rest of the show. And did we mention Mallory? Did we introduce Mallory Evans? No. She's happily playing for us, so enjoy her music, and go down to the sit at the tables and enjoy yourselves.